Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. This is a tough one for a lot of people. Let's talk about raising prices, how to do it, when to do it, how not to do it. Raising prices is always a difficult thing for a business owner to do, particularly a smaller business. You have your loyal clients. You're not sure how to raise prices. Let's talk about when to know it's the right time to raise prices and how to do it effectively without losing people.
I have to start with something I learned, something I was told when I officially got into the consulting coaching world. And I bought that franchise and we were doing all these trainings. At one point, we were talking about the pricing in our region of how much we would charge for like our signature course, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was really cool that they said, okay, I mean, they had a standard, a low standard, but they said, okay, you can start above this. X amount, we'll say $2,000. But every time that you get certified or go and get more training or invest more into yourself, we want you to raise your pricing. And here's kind of like the range of, but there's no limit. Like you can add additional things and stuff. And that always sat with me, especially the service providers that I have worked with over the years, either with you in our groups or independently. That is absolutely one of the things I will always tell them. Every time you go and get more training, get more certifications, invest more into your personal business, your prices should go up. Into you, and if you're part of your personal business, your prices should go up. You know, obviously there are, I say this with a grain of salt, like norms, like high, like your range norms. And there are things that, you know, kind of where you'll hit a cap at that particular service or whatnot. That's more internal and target audience and kind of a few other factors. But that is one of the things that will forever, ever stay in my psyche.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that assessment. And one of the other things that stuck with me, if we're talking about things that have stuck with us, is, and I don't remember who said it, maybe it was me who said it, I don't remember who, but if you're not adjusting your prices every year, then you are giving yourself a pay cut every year. If you look at inflation, and I'm speaking primarily from a US base here, if you're thinking about inflation, like United States inflation, if you're thinking about the cost of living, the cost of your products and services, your cost of goods sold, all those things are gradually going up. And if you're not raising your prices to meet that or exceed, then you're taking a pay cut every single year. And I know as a small business owner, you have this feeling like, oh, well, everybody has it hard. I don't want my clients to have to pay for that. It's the cost of doing business. I'm going to absorb that cost. To some extent, yes, there are some things I don't want you to pass fees on to your clients, like nitpick them, nickel and dime them, like you have to pay this and this and this. It's really, actually, that's a huge pet peeve. And you do have to raise prices in some capacity in order to keep your business open. Because if you keep your prices the same for 35 years, you're going to price yourself out of business. Mm-hmm. Because eventually, I mean, there is something to be said about the economics of, you know, a fixed pricing model, et cetera, where you think that you're going to get the quantity, the volume of people at that low price, but it's not going to make up for the fact that your prices are so low that you can't afford to stay in business. And that's really what we're talking about here, is that it's not just arbitrarily raising your prices because you had on a whim on Tuesday that you wanted to charge $50 instead of $20. That's not what we're talking about here. This is strategic pricing. Yes. We want to strategically be raising our prices because, again, if you're not looking at your numbers, if you're not thinking about the strategy behind raising the prices, then you don't even know if that's going to cover it. I mean, what if you raise your prices by $10 and to you that's a lot, but you needed to raise it by $25 in order to keep your doors open? So think about the strategy behind it too. So we're going to get into that, but we wanted the thing that stuck with me was, if you're not raising your prices every year in some capacity, whether that's time worth value, like there's lots of ways that you raise prices necessarily, but if you're not raising prices in some way, you're taking a pay cut every single year.
I love that you bring that up. And I think that globally also, because almost all countries, the currency is going up in some aspect or another. Not all of them. We're not ignorant, but overall, like 20 years ago, things cost different than they cost today. Also, industry shifts, like sometimes the industry will shift and the market shift. And the one example I keep thinking about is the real estate game. Like that house was worth, $200,000 and now it's worth $2 million, right? Amanda and I met in Hawaii, lived in Hawaii 16 years. For me, that's home. I know for her, that's home. We're not talking about like be jerks, kind of what she just said, because this is industry or environmental or situational shifts that water will go, or eggs right now. Like that's a big thing in the US. Or like water in Hawaii, or toilet paper if like tsunami or something's happening, more tsunami, right? Or hurricane is coming. Like they'll triple, quadruple the price. That's not, again, what we're talking about, but industry shifts can definitely influence when you should raise your prices. If it becomes more popular because it becomes the new in thing, you can still be a lower price point if you want to, but you need to raise your prices. I think that that's really important. That kind of goes with inflation as well. A few others that I think are more personal, and this is like looking at your books, which Amanda started to talk about, is if you're fully booked, if clients aren't hesitating, prospects aren't hesitating when they're saying buying, right? So if they're just like, yes, 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 maybe you need to look at the pricing point. For those of us who have ever sold anything, maybe not in our business, but like put it up on Craigslist or up on Facebook Marketplace or at a garage sale, and it like goes like this and people are fighting over it. You're like, damn, I should have priced it higher. I know a lot of us have had that feeling. It's the same concept in your business. Or if you're undervalued. We just had a conversation this last week with a client of ours in one of our group programs, and they undervalued themselves, but now they're starting to realize it in this particular community. And so they're raising their prices because not only do they feel undervalued, but remember, we train others how to treat us. So if we're undervaluing and not even charging what market price should be, then other people are going to treat us a certain type of way as well.
And you can also lower your entire industry standard by charging too little. So if your industry, let's say, for example, your industry standard, it's $100 an hour and you're charging $5 an hour, then suddenly people start looking at you and like, oh, well, how come this one over here that's the exact same is $5 and you're 100 and everybody else is 100? Like, what's the difference? And that can work positively or negatively. Yep, everybody could take it, but then the other side's just saying, well, you get what you pay for. And then people start to think, well, that's probably a cheaper version. Like that's the knockoff version. That's the terrible manufacturing version. That's one that like used children in sweatshop version. Like, so you get what you pay for, but you're training your target audience to understand what your price point is. That's why the target audience of someone who buys Bentleys and Louis Vuittons every week is different than the price point of somebody who's buying used Toyota Corolla and a purse from Claire's. And those are very United States specific companies. But the point is, and most people know what a Louis Vuitton is. The point is high end and low end. Those are different clientele because they have different markets. So you have to also know what your target market, or your ideal client is willing to pay, or redefine your target market if you're getting into those higher levels. So there is a bit of that as well, but we're not going to discuss that today in full because that's a whole other podcast. We should just constantly write notes, another podcast idea. However, when it comes to pricing your anything, your product or service, to me, the most important thing is to really look at what is the cost, what does it cost you to run your business? If you have office space, if you have a brick and mortar, for instance, I'm a business consultant. Most of my work is done from home. So the actual cost of doing business isn't the same as with my brick and mortar business, where I have rent, electricity, CAM fees, employee fees. Like there's a lot more taxes that are different between those two businesses. They're very different businesses. So a brick and mortar versus something that doesn't have a building, they're going to be different prices, but both of them have a cost. So what is the actual cost of business? Because if you're not covering your expenses, we need to get on a call. Because if your rent is $6,000, but you're only charging enough to make $5,000, and you're wondering why every month you have a credit card bill you can't pay off, well, that's because you're not charging enough to cover your basic expenses. I call it the nut of your life. Like, what is it? And you can do the same thing with your personal life. If you only make $50,000 a year, but you're living off of a $75,000 budget, that's why your credit card bills are so high. That's why things aren't working out for you. So what is the cost of doing business? What's the cost of your living? And then you work a budget out from there. So this is basic budgetary stuff, but when it comes to, it's still the same with when you're pricing your business. It's basically like a budget. If this is how much it costs to run my business, it's $100 an hour to have my business even even exist and be open, then I need to be getting $100 an hour worth of products or services so that I can keep my business running. So if you haven't done the numbers on your business specifically, this is a great time to do it. We're, for United States, you're in their tax season, so you're already thinking about the money anyway. Really look at your business. When's the last time, and when you created your prices, did you even think about that? Or did you just look at your competition and just kind of like throw out some numbers arbitrarily, like, oh, well, so-and-so down the street charges $10, so I guess I'll charge $9. So did you look at your business? And I've had that conversation. I know both of us have had that conversation with clients. Like, how did you price yourself out? And I just had a client, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, who had me look at a competitor. How come she's charging so low? Like, what's her business that she's charging so low? I'm like, first of all, look at the rent in her area. She's 50 miles away from you, and the rent expenses there are half the price that you're here. So I can't guarantee everything, but just look at that one thing tells me that she's got less expenses than you. So she can afford to do less, but also she's only a year in. She might not make it a year. You don't know. So you can't be comparing because you don't know somebody else's. You could be comparing your value with somebody else's peak or vice versa. So when we're thinking about pricing our businesses, it should be based on the strategy of what our business expenses are and not what we assume other people's businesses are expending. So the strategy first has to come of your actual real numbers. What does it cost to run your business?
Yes, you're not comparing apples to apples. It's interesting. Now, I think this is a good time to put this point in because Amanda just talked about the nut. Like, most people don't know their nut. So that means that regardless of, you don't know how much you have to make in order to keep the doors open. And Amanda's example, if you need 100, then you need to be making 100, actually need to be making more than that to make any type of profit and have a little bit of flex, right? And so typically, a standard, depending on the industry, might be a 10 to 30%. But the client in our group, we told her she actually needs to double her prices because she's really undervalued. So it really depends if you are already know your nut and making a profit there, then how much, also like the industry standard and like all these other factors. But typically, if you're making profit already and there's no outside circumstances that need to influence it, it's usually between 10 and 30% year on end, give or take. I mean, but that's about the average across industries.
And that doesn't have to be across every single product or service that you have. It's just an overall, like, you need to be upping a little bit every year. So Lynn can keep going, but like, that's not like every year you have to raise everything by 30%. It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah. And if you are a product and a service, like I have some contractors, some builders who are been clients of mine for over a decade. I have some people in that industry, and especially in Hawaii, because of COVID, what happened with the shipping and different things like that. And now with the whole additional taxes, you have to account for the situational stuff, like the industry things that are happening, but also the situational. For those in that kind of arena or that have a contract, you should have some kind of clause about raising your prices, and that industry shifts and situational, like environmental things that are out of your control, may increase. So for example, after COVID, all the lumberyards shut down, all these different things happened during COVID, and then there were strikes. Hawaii has to ship everything in. So not only did the lead time increase exponentially, but also the shipping cost was outrageous, and the price of the product was outrageous, or the material. And so they had to rewrite all of their contracts during the time, so that way when they were bringing on new clients, that they wouldn't eat that cost, because it shut a lot of businesses down, actually a lot of businesses. So again, we already talked about signs of when it's time, and also things that can influence it, but also covering your butt in your contract. Even in my alarm company contract, we had it in a clause in there that certain things may raise it based on blah, 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 but also that we're going to raise it every year. And we had the percentage in there that we typically raise it. It was a gap. It wasn't exact, but that way it was kind of the expectation that it's already going to happen, because it does. In other industries, other bigger companies, they're doing it as well.
We know that when you raise the prices, there's always this apprehension that you're going to lose people. And first, we want to say, yes, sometimes you will. Sometimes you're going to lose people because as you increase your prices, you might be getting into a different target market and you might price out some people. However, generally speaking, the price increase will offset the loss of those people, and the new people you're bringing in are going to be starting at that higher price. And so if you're doing it strategically, you won't lose a lot of people. Again, if you suddenly quadruple your prices without any kind of proper layout or prep for the client or reason, then yeah, you're going to lose a lot of people all at once. But conversely, if you are raising them strategically and you're giving them the lead time, you're giving them every opportunity to grandfathering them in some cases. Actually, in my experience in the last 25 years, there's not a lot of loss there because the people that you do lose, you make up for in new clients or in the extra price that you increased. So when that little interim, when you're kind of like losing people and gaining new people, it really evens out. I've never had it happen where, knock on wood, I've never had it happen where I just suddenly lose everybody because of my price increase. People are used to having prices increase. And as long as you are presenting it in a strategic way and you are, again, not price gouging them, they should kind of get over it and understand that that's the cost of doing business as well. They know that their rent went up, so why wouldn't your rent go up? And you don't want to price yourself out of business just because you're worried about what someone else might think about you raising prices, because sometimes they don't care at all. I've had many occasions where I've had people, services raise prices on me and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, that's your new price, because they were underpricing themselves. And I was really lucky to be sitting in that super, super cheap price for a year. So I'm like, yeah, you should have been charging way more. And at this point, I'm shocked it didn't happen sooner. So don't project what you think someone's going to think about your pricing increase. If you're strategic about it and you are presenting it properly, it shouldn't be the big issue that you think it is in your head.
I can't tell you, and I know you're the same, but how many times, clients or not clients, that I tell people you have to raise your price. Like that was my go-to to so many business owners I would talk with. You have to raise your prices. What is wrong with you? You started to kind of get into two other aspects. I think one is I want to talk about the justification of raising prices or the increase and also how to announce it. But I want to go to a point that you made about like the offset. I think there's a factor that's missing that we're not talking about in the potential attrition or like the loss and gain. Doesn't necessarily have to do with the price increase or how and when to raise it. But if you're taking care of your clients, there's communication, there's the expectation of like it's written into your contract. You have that dialogue, When you're actually taking care of them, you're less likely to lose them than when you raise your prices versus if you're just going through the motions or they're just another number, they're like a cattle, then you're more likely to lose them. So just planting that seed because of what you were just talking about with the whole raising of prices. I think that you never had that adverse effect because you were also taking care of your people. You were constantly increasing your income. Yeah. One of the things that we talked about on our Badasserie program this week was about like the justification of increasing. I think it's twofold. First, it's the expectation. Like I know Amanda has it, but I definitely know this is like a me thing. Like things are just matter of fact. And this is the way I've always led. I know it's a present thing of my, like a presence, like it's part of my presence is like, no, that's just the way it is. So people don't typically give me pushback. And if they do, it's just a little bit of pushback because I set the expectation energetically, like all of the things. And so I feel like overall, typically justification is not needed. But if you're nurturing your clients, because these are your clients, now the new people, they don't know here nor there. They might know, but they're prospects. But your current clients are the ones that need to be addressed. But I don't think justification is needed. In very rare occasions do I feel like you could give a very little justification if needed. But in my opinion, and I know Amanda feels the same way, we do not believe in justifying the price increase. It's a matter of fact. But if you have to, there are ways to do it that are not making it seem like you're justifying. It's about like, this is the cost of doing business, or, you can build it up beforehand. Amanda's actually great at this. I don't know about in this necessarily this context, but in other contexts, you're really good about this. Like, putting a bunch of testimonials out about like how amazing you are, highlighting a new skill set, and then be like, oh, by the way, we're raising our prices. So it's like feeding them all the good stuff subliminally and in their face at the same time. So you're not technically justifying it, but you're kind of building up and planting the seed and putting them on the high horse with you.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that you don't justify, because I don't really either. Because in my opinion, this is the price. That's the price. If I go to the grocery store and I see the milk is $7, I'm either going to buy the milk or I'm not. I'm not going to go up to the front desk and haggle about the price of milk because I feel like last week it was 30 cents cheaper. Like, no. The way I mean justification is, for example, I had a client who had not raised their prices in 10 years and they were grossly undercharging on everything. And there were a couple of things that she did have to double the price. And so she, being the nurturer that she was, really was struggling with doing that to her clients because she was like, everyone's going to hate me. They're going to all leave because nobody can afford it. And she was projecting what she thought they were going to say, but she was grossly undercharging, grossly, like industry standard, way low on her services. So her justification in her email was talking about all the certifications and training she did. She, based on this, the marketplace. So she felt the need, based on her personality, to give it a bit more justification. But really, it was just a way of saying, like, these are the facts. This is how much we're charging, but in a nicer way that she felt good about. But it was more her justifying it to herself, because a lot of times when you raise prices, and let's say you have employees or people who have to be the ones on the sales force, if they're not in on the prices and they don't believe those prices, then they're going to be setting you up for failure, because if they're like, oh, well, yeah, it is kind of expensive now, that mindset in your sales team or employees that you have, if they don't buy into the idea that this is what you guys are worth, then it's absolutely going to hit you in the butt, because that's happened to me before and a couple of businesses where the people who are working for me, the contractors, didn't understand the price increase. And so they thought I was just raising the price to be a jerk, gouging them, even though it was only like $5 difference, but they weren't buying in on it. They didn't think they were worth that money. And so they were constantly having the same dialogue. People, yeah, it is really expensive. Oh, I know it's really expensive. No, it's not expensive. You're creating that dialogue. And now everybody thinks that it's expensive because you said it's expensive, but it's really not that expensive. If you go on like Yelp, for example, and they have the little dollar signs that say how expensive a place is, and you see it's $5 signs expensive, like, oh yeah, I could never afford that place. But then you go and look at the menu, you're like, oh, it's only like $30. It's not really that expensive for the quality I'm getting. So it's really relative. What one person thinks is really expensive might be super cheap to somebody else. So again, we're not projecting what prices are. If you're going to justify something, I would rather justify it to my sales force so that they're all on board. So they understand that this is the cost that you need them to be. I mean, if they're going to be your sales force, particularly, you need them to understand that this is the price. This is why it's the price. This is what we're worth. This is what the value that we give, the value provide. This is what the industry gives. Like we're grossly undercharging. It's time now. So I don't necessarily mean that you should be writing these long, intricate emails to each of your clients talking about the woes that you had to, the struggle that you had to increase prices. In fact, please do not do that. Instead, it's more of just if you have to justify it to yourself, if you have to justify it to your team, whatever you have to do to get over the mental block you have around that price increase, because the mental block that you have is going to do more detriment than the actual price increase.
Agreed. All right. So how to announce it? Again, we just talked about the justification. Very rare occasions you need to justify, but keep it minimal, and it's not victim mentality. It could be very matter of fact, but how to announce it is, I'm a big believer in giving notice for my current clients, usually 30 days or more. If you can give longer, sometimes up to 45 days, depending on the industry, it could be all the way up to 60 days. I think that there should be a limited time offer for them. Like they can even buy a package of those and be able to have 6 months or maybe 8 months to use all of that package. So they prepay you at that cost, and you can limit that, or you don't have to do that. But I would say you give a notice, you can add a limited time to lock in that pricing, or bulk buy, bulk purchase. If you're giving 45 days, maybe they have the next 15 days to bulk buy or lock in a certain price for X amount of time. They don't get that full 45 days. This is to push a decision quicker. Just be really don't make exceptions. Be like, nope, this is it. And for your clients coming on, as soon as you know what that price increase, your new clients, they automatically get that new price. So if you get 45-day window for your existing clients or 30-day window for your existing clients, Any new clients that come on, I would suggest go straight to that new price. Now, if it's a product, that's slightly different. It goes up typically all at the same time. But if it's a service, I introduce those new people at that new price immediately. I don't give them the 45 days or 30 days, whatever that is.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up giving your existing people a time to bulk buy or grandfather themselves in for a certain period of time for a certain amount of bulk. Because honestly, number one, it is taking care of them. They already know, like, trust you. They've already been buying the services. So you give them an opportunity to buy at that older rate, give them a heads up, and often they will buy in bulk, particularly if you give them the option to buy a large chunk. They still restrictions and they have a certain amount of time, etc. But it's a great way to give yourself a cash infusion with your existing people, even at the old price. They already know that they're going to use you. Then they're going to buy it at a cheaper price because they know they're going to use it. So even depending on the service and the product, there's ways you can also add value to that too. Like, oh, if you buy this many, if you don't use them all, I'll let you share it with a friend, or, there's ways you can get over the fact that they're going to have new restrictions. But again, it's how you present it. If you come to your old clients and you say, oh, sorry, like, we're raising prices. I know this is really troubling for you. Like, I'm so sorry to do this to you. Then you're setting them up to be sorry that you're doing that to them. But if you come down, like, we're super excited. We're adding all this awesome stuff to schedule. I just took this course and I'm really excited to bring you all this new information. And you get them on the bandwagon that they should be excited about all these awesome new things that you've learned that you're going to give to them, then they're not going to have a problem paying extra. So if you're coming to them with that mindset of, oh, I'm so sorry this price had to happen, you're playing the victim to your own pricing model. So get over that. I know it's really hard for a lot. I don't have a money issue. A lot of people do. A lot of people have a really hard time asking for the money and understanding their value. I don't personally have that problem, which makes me come off as harsh in a lot of ways when I'm explaining to my clients who do have the money problems. They're like, I can't just ask people for the money. Like, yes, you can. However, that comes from my mindset of, this is what it's worth. I'm not going to argue with it and make it seem weird. And I'm not going to be a victim of my own pricing choices. Like, this is what I need to stay in business. This is what we need to provide you the best value. This is what we need in order to solve the problem. Like, let's all get on the bandwagon and be excited about this. Even when I explain price increases to staff or to contractors, again, it comes from a place of excitement because of the growth potential, not sorrow over the loss of this old deal that I used to offer. So that mindset shift will also change just how easy or how difficult you make it to make that price transition, because sometimes it's not that big a deal and you've made it to be a bigger deal than it is because people have money issues, but it really isn't that big a deal.
Agreed. We'd like to know, what has been your favorite either email, message that you've got, like the one that you like the most about a price increase, because we're gathering them. We want to see that you sent it out or you received it, where you were notified, and why you like that. Because did you feel taken care of or whatnot? Or what's the worst that you got? Go ahead and send us that story. We want to hear your stories about price increases, either within your company or done to you, because some of the stories that we've went through this week have been wild. And I know our own experiences as well. So please share that with us. We'd love to hear it.
And I'd also love to know, what's your pricing issue? Like, what is your block? Just a block around raising your prices. Let's talk about it. What is the block that you feel like you have? What is the hesitation you have in raising your prices? How can we help you work that out? Because there's lots of different types of blocks that you have around raising prices. So what is yours right now? Let us know and we will help you through it.
Absolutely. Also, I'd love to know with our audience, when was the last time you took a look at your pricing and raised your prices? Like, when was the last time? And now are you thinking about, I need to raise my prices? Like, it should be written into your calendar, evaluate pricing structure and raise prices every year. Every year. Amanda is really good at that. Like, it's very strategic in her calendar. I am, but not as strategic as what Amanda is typically. Like, it's every year at a certain time.
It is. And I'm still in business. Point that out. It's strategic. Everybody raised prices and I'm still in business. So I haven't lost any clients. Knock on wood.
Yeah. All right. Share this podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or all of the other wonderful platforms, make sure you go over to YouTube. That way you can watch us too and subscribe there. Till next time.
Get after it.
All right, everyone, it's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.